What's going on, everyone? So Jaxson Hayes is a player that showed a lot of promise with the New Orleans Pelicans, but hadn't gotten a lot of opportunity, especially behind like Valanciunas. The Pelicans really are trying to be a elite team. They're trying to, if they get everyone healthy, try to contend. Last year, you saw the Pelicans when everybody was healthy, that they were the number one seed in the Western Conference. They, by every metric, were ridiculous on both sides of the basketball. How much of that was just the moment, right? We've seen guys like the Jazz had a stretch like that, and then things kind of came back to reality. You see teams kind of exceed expectations for an extended period, and then things kind of settle back in. But Jaxson Hayes is a guy that just kind of feels like a guy that just needs proper development and proper opportunity. He has shown the signs. He has shown the ability to potentially be a real fixture in this league at the center position. And at 23 years old, he's young enough to have been drafted in this year's draft, right? He's a guy that has a lot of potential. Like, if the Lakers drafted Jaxson Hayes this year, people would be hyping him up like, oh, like the Lakers got a steal, right? But it's because he hasn't really overwhelmed at the center position. You know, last year he played around 13 minutes. He averaged 5 rebounds and 3 assists. I think the best judge as far as what he could potentially bring to the Lakers, because I do believe he will have a real impact, or has the potential to have a real impact, and could be a solid fixture for the Lakers for not only this season, but beyond. Just depends on, is Jaxson Hayes willing to commit to that? Because if he does have a really good season, does he pursue the bag elsewhere? Or does he look at it as like, no, I could be a huge part of this Lakers team for the foreseeable future? Time will tell. But I think not this past year, but the previous year, I think is a good example of what we can expect from Jaxson Hayes, bare minimum. Because in 2021, 2022, he averaged about 20 minutes per game, played 70 games total, 28 games in which he started. And in those games, he gave you 9 points and 4.5 rebounds, half a steal, half a block, and then half of an assist, a little more than in all three, but essentially just shy of one of each. He is a very good pick and roll defensive big man. He also does a good job of taking care of the ball. Granted, he doesn't have the ball in his hands a lot. He's not a guy that you're dumping the ball down to and letting him go to work like a Valanciunas. But this is a guy that I do believe could be, a 10-8 guy for the Lakers. Right? The one thing that the Pelicans don't have that the Lakers have an abundance of is playmakers, right? You got LeBron James. Not only do you have LeBron James, but you have Austin Reeves. You have D'Angelo Russell, right? You have these guys that could really put him in a position to have success. He's excellent in that dunker spot. He's got the length, the size, the athleticism, 6'11", 220 pounds, something like that. So he's a little skinny, but again, he's extremely young. He should over time develop that muscle, grow into his grown man body, and I think could have even more of an impact. He's a great pick and roll defensive guy. He's a solid help defender. He is a guy that needs better discipline on the defensive side, but the tools are there for him, right? He just needs to learn to hone in, have that level of discipline. And I do think he could be a really good defensive big man in this league. Again, he moves his feet well. He's got good quickness at that spot. He's a floor running big, so the Lakers, they like to get out and push the pace in transition. Him as a trailer would be really good. And he's good in the little dump offs, right? So he's a guy that you could drive and dump it down to, or if he's established position, you could really just kind of kick it down to, and he can kind of give you that little, like hook shot, little floater, in which he shoots like 70% on. But this is a guy for his career that's basically 62% from the field. Again, everything is pretty much at the rim, and it's all smaller sample sizes. The biggest sample size he has as far as field goal attempts, it was, like I said, in that season in which he played 20 minutes. He averaged 5.7 field goals per game and shot at a 61.6%. So, again, it's about the opportunity. And Jaxson Hayes, like many other young players, and this is one of the great things about the Lakers, not only for now, but for the future, is these young players wanting to come to the Lakers in a position to if they have an impact and they show that they can play the game of basketball, they're going to get contracts elsewhere. Malik Monk, even Lonnie Walker was a guy that tried to make that attempt, right? He didn't get the Malik Monk treatment, but still, right? It's the idea of like, I can bet on myself. I can go to the Lakers that have a huge spotlight, and if I'm given the opportunity, I could really shine. Jaxson Hayes, I fully believe, is going to get the opportunity. Even if the Lakers get, say, Christian Wood, I still think Jaxson Hayes probably plays around 15 to 20 minutes because he's our only backup center. And if you get Christian Wood, yes, he can play the center position, but he is best at the power forward position, right? Because his ability to stretch the floor, he doesn't really bang too well. He is a guy that could block some shots and stuff, but he's not a guy that, is best there. He's almost more of a power forward with the size of a center, where Jaxson Hayes strictly playing center. Anthony Davis is going to miss 20 plus games, right? So Jaxson Hayes, if he locks in, if he's focused, if he can, really put in the time, energy, and work, he's a guy that's going to have the opportunity with the Lakers. And I truly believe that that's what he was banking on when he came to the Lakers. He was looking at it as like, if I go to Lakers, it's just me and Anthony Davis, right? Even if they get another big man, I'm still in a good position, right? Like, if the Lakers get, say, a Bismack Biyombo, I still think Jaxson Hayes plays over him, right? Like, most of the centers that the Lakers could get, I do think Jaxson Hayes plays over, unless he becomes like Damian Jones, where Damian Jones was basically unplayable, which is really odd because he got traded and immediately became half decent again. But we saw like he wasn't the guy that they had hoped he would be, right? Thomas Bryant was really good offensively, but was literally not an opinion, nothing like, no, like it factually the worst defensive big man in the league. And he couldn't even see playing time with the Denver Nuggets, which I find pretty funny that like he wanted to get off the Lakers roster because he wanted to actually play. And he ended up going to a Denver team where he played even less than he ever did with the Lakers, right? So I don't know, just something that's funny. But Jaxson Hayes, right? I expect him to play a lot, right? One of the big reasons Anthony Davis had to play so heavily and Thomas Bryant didn't play as much, it's because the Lakers weren't in a position to mess around, right? They had to play Anthony Davis, 38 minutes a game at the center position. Where the idea is this year, the Lakers aren't going to be where every game is desperation and they basically have to take the last, 30 games of the season as if they were game sevens of the playoffs, right? The idea is that they'll be good enough over the course of the season to where Anthony Davis will only have to play like 30, maybe 32 minutes a game. He slots in at the 4 for like half that time, plays the 5 for the other half. Anthony Davis probably starts and then closes out games at the center position. But all that time in between, I do think Jaxson Hayes is going to get the opportunity to play. I think he averages somewhere in that like 15 to 20 minute per game area, and it's up to him, right? He is going to be a huge threat out in transition and in that dunker spot, right? Because, again, you have Reeves and you have D'Lo and even Anthony Davis to an extent, right? All these guys that can get into the interior, draw and collapse the defense, and pass it out and make plays, right? Get the lob to a guy like Jaxson Hayes who can just run towards the rim and really dunk it in, right? Now, he's not really a floor stretching guy, right? He's not a guy that's going to heavily shoot threes or anything like that. This is a guy that has, for his career, averaged less than half a three-point attempt per game. The most three-point attempts he ever took, again, was that year he played 20 minutes, and it was still under one attempt per game. He shot 0.8 threes, and he did shoot it at a 35% clip. So that is something that's very interesting, that if Jaxson Hayes could even just be serviceable, right? Like, can he take like 2 attempts per game and average over the season like 33 to 35%, right? League average is 35%. And again, I don't even necessarily need him to be league average this year, but can he be enough to where teams have to respect it, right? Like, because if he can, then that just opens up so much for the Lakers. Because, one, you could have him, even if it's in the corner spot, right? Most big men like it at the top of the key, but like if he can even just knock down in the corner spot, then I think you can run a lot of sets like you do with Jared Vanderbilt, where teams are going to leave him open, right? And then what happens is the defense kind of forgets about him, and now you have a 7-foot, athletic young that you could just lob it up to, and he can just hammer it home, right? Like, you could run a lot of backdoor screens, a lot of pick and rolls. Again, you kind of tuck him in the corner, and once he's forgotten, tell him, when the defense sags off, make a play for the rim, right? Like, there's just a lot that you can utilize him in if he can if he's willing to take the shots. Not saying he has to be elite, not expecting him to shoot 40% from three, but is he willing to take those shots? Because you see a lot of players, a lot of big men, they don't want to shoot the three. They're hesitant to shoot the three, right? Because it's not their shot and they can't knock it down, right? Like, I don't care if he misses it. What it does is it just opens more up, right? Like, that's the idea. That's why you see all these centers kind of stepping out a little bit, right? Like, even centers that aren't notorious for knocking down three balls, they usually step out a little bit, especially that would operate and allow on the offensive end Austin Reeves, D'Lo, LeBron, AD, all these guys to basically be able to get into the interior and operate without it being clunky with Jaxson Hayes, right? Again, I don't want him taking 5 or 6 threes a game, but if he can take a 1 to 3 3-pointers per game, right? Just to kind of open things up. And if he can just knock down one of those 3, that's 33%. I'm totally okay. Like, to me, that would be perfect. But I'm curious to see if Darvin Ham even asks him or tries to have him do that. But, they believe that they could turn Thomas Bryant and Damian Jones into legit three-point shooters. Thomas Bryant was always a pretty decent three-point shooter. Damian Jones had his moments. But if they could kind of do that with Jaxson Hayes, again, 23 years old, a lot of room for growth, a lot of room for improvement. I think he's a guy that could really have an impact for this Lakers roster. And even if he's not shooting any threes, right? Even if they just tell him, like, hey, don't ever take a 3, I still believe he can be a 10 and 8 guy in 20 minutes, right? Or 10 and 7 guy, which is all you need from a backup. And I think most of those 10 points per game are going to be from, lobs and offensive rebounds and stuff like that, right? Even if he's an 8 and 7 guy, right? Like, let's say he doesn't even get to double digits. If he can just be an 8 and 7 guy with a block a game, I think that's fine. I think that'd be perfect, because that's all you need is somebody to kind of come in and just man the middle, basically. And he's got good size, got good length, good athleticism. He's got everything that you could want, all the tools and intangibles to have success at that center position. And he's a guy that I think can make an impact. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think of Jaxson Hayes? Think, he's betting on himself, definitely. Think he's going to have an impact? You think he won't? Do you hope that he's a long-term center for the Lakers? How do you feel? What your thoughts are? I'd love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments.